Good afternoon. We'll start with statements from the Secretary General and then the Prime Minister, and following that we'll take a few questions. Secretary General.
Prime Minister Starmer, dear Keir, it is great to see you again, and I'm delighted to welcome you here to NATO headquarters.
Thank you.
The United Kingdom, as you know, has always been a staunch and essential ally. You are one of the founders of our great alliance. RAF pilots help secure Allied skies. The Royal Navy helps keep our seas safe. And the British Army contributes to our shared security. You are world-leading in cyber and innovation. And you make an invaluable contribution to our nuclear deterrent. The UK is also a firm friend to Ukraine. You have provided billions in military and humanitarian aid, vital training and landmark security guarantees. Going forward, we must not only sustain but continue to step up our support so that when the time comes, Ukraine can sit at the negotiating table in a position of strength and pursue a good deal for lasting peace. Our world is increasingly more dangerous. We must be better equipped to meet any threat across all domains, both now and in the future. Russian destabilization campaigns in allied countries are on the rise. They have targeted digital infrastructure, British officials and even your National Health Service. Just last month, once again, you detected a Russian spy ship in British waters. And you made it clear to Moscow that such brazen acts were simply unacceptable. To stop these attacks once and for all, we need to up our game and make sure our deterrence leaves no room for doubt. We can do this by investing even more in defense. To put it in another way, to prevent war, we must spend more. The UK understands this instinctively. You have long met the 2% target. And I welcome plans to further increase investments in defense. Because in a more dangerous world, 2% will not be enough to keep us safe. We need to invest considerably more. We also need to replenish our stocks, and fast. There's no time to waste. Reviving our defense industries to ramp up defense production is an absolute must. During World War II, factories in the UK and the US produced billions of rounds of ammunition. That was before digitization and automation. With all the might of British manufacturing, just imagine what we could achieve now. The challenges we face are complex, but together in NATO, there's nothing we cannot do. So thank you for your continued leadership and support of our transatlantic alliance. Prime Minister, dear Keir, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's very good to be here. I should say it's very good to be back here. And as you know, the UK's commitment to NATO is stronger than ever because the need for NATO is stronger than ever. And we've had a very good and productive discussion today on how we can meet the rising threats that Russia poses across our continent, including the situation, of course, in Ukraine. Now, a couple of weeks ago, as you know, I was in Kyiv. Yeah. I saw residential buildings destroyed just days before. I met soldiers in the ICU recovering from really terrible burns. And I met children whose parents are out there now on the front line. And it's yet another reminder that this is a war not just in Ukraine, but a war on Ukraine against those children and their futures. And that's why together we stand with them. We are all working to end this war. But let's be absolutely clear. Peace will come through strength. And we must do all that we can to support Ukraine's defence. And that means stabilising the front line, providing the kit and training that they need. And that's why this year the UK will give more military support to Ukraine than ever before. We need to see all allies stepping up, particularly in Europe. President Trump has threatened more sanctions on Russia, and it's clear that that's got Putin rattled. We know that he's worried about the state of the Russian economy. So I'm here to work with our European partners on keeping up the pressure, targeting the energy revenues and the companies supplying his missile factories to crush Putin's war machine. Because ultimately, alongside our military support, that is what will bring peace closer. And we must keep working together to bolster NATO. And as you say, things that would have provoked utter outrage just a few years ago have now become almost commonplace. Russian spy ships loitering off the British coast, a campaign of sabotage across Europe, cyber attacks, election interference, and attempted assassinations. Russia is seeking to destabilize our continent and target our values. So we should still be outraged, and we must harden European defence. In the UK, we're proud to be a leading NATO ally, part of the forward land forces, helping to police our skies and patrol our seas. Our defence spending is, of course, 2.3% of GDP now, and we're working hard to set the path to 2.5. And NATO's plans and requirements, as well as the principle of NATO first, will be at the heart of our strategic defence review this year. Across Europe, we must shoulder more of the burden now, because it's our burden to carry. Now, that's what I'll be discussing at the EU Council this evening. We want to deliver an ambitious UK-EU security partnership to bolster NATO, covering military technology and R&D, improving the mobility of forces across Europe, protecting our critical infrastructure, and deepening our industrial collaboration to increase defence production. We can't be commentators when it comes to matters of peace on our continent. We must lead, and that's what I'm determined that we will do. Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, we now have time for a few questions. Third row, Sky.
Thanks very much. Beth Rigby, Sky News. Secretary General, NATO has stood united against Russia with all allies in lockstep since the invasion in 2022. Now 2 members, Canada and US, are on the cusp of a trade war. Do you fear the alliance is unravelling at the most fragile of times? And Prime Minister, President Trump says tariffs on the EU are coming. He hasn't ruled out tariffs on the UK. Are you worried about that? And be it from forcing Ukraine to the negotiating table to threatening trade wars with allies, isn't it the truth that President Trump is a bad thing for Europe's economic prosperity and security? Thank you very much.
On your first question, let me say that I'm absolutely convinced we can deal with these issues, and there are always issues between allies. It is never always tranquil and happy going. There are always issues. Sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. But I'm absolutely convinced that will not get in the way of our collective determination to keep our deterrence strong. And when you talk trade, it is interesting to see that the trade surplus of the US getting into Europe is since 2022. They sell more to Europe than we sell to them. And the net surplus is $180 billion since 2022. So that tells you something, that there are more figures and numbers to look at. But going back to your question, I'm absolutely convinced it will not have an impact on our collective deterrence.
Thank you very much, Beth. Look, on the question firstly of tariffs, obviously it's early days, and I think what's really important is open and strong trading relations, and that's been the basis of my discussions with President Trump. And I know that intense US-EU discussions are planned, In relation to the issue that you link it to of Ukraine, I do think it's right for us to acknowledge the role that the US have played in relation to the joint effort on Ukraine. And that's, of course, pivotal because it's not just a question of a war or the sovereignty of Ukraine. It is not just a European issue. It's a question of global security. And I think it's very important that we see it in that context. And one thing that's come out of the awful conflict in Ukraine is actually a stronger and bigger NATO, which I think is really important. And as you know, in the Labour Party, we're really proud of the fact that we're a founding member all those years ago in relation to NATO. I think NATO is as important now as it was back then, and it's really important that it's in a stronger position. I think the discussions that we've been having between us today and the discussions I'll have later on this evening are about how we take that forward and strengthen it even further, because there has to be a very strong European element to the defence that we are providing in really difficult times. Thank you.